Hi, I'm Ian.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast where we bring you the actual ghost stories
With the actual history.
in the actual place. We have another hotel for you,
Yes, the Laurel Point Inn.
and it has a very rich history as what it was formerly known as Dead Man's Point, and there's a good reason for that.
I like the name of that.
Not great for the brochures. We'll cover that coming up on this episode of Ghosts and Bears.
Hello.
Hello, how are everybody?
Yes, how are everyone?
We are happy to be back from our vacation. We needed to go and needed to have a break.
Yeah. Was it a break, though? I'm not sure. We'll find out.
Yeah. Moby did really well. He's such a good little traveler.
Yeah, he's a good little travel dog.
Yeah, he is. He's tiny but mighty, so we're grateful for that. And we were going to go on a different kind of adventure in the middle of our Calgary adventure, and then we changed our minds. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I had plane tickets booked.
Yay, air miles.
Yeah, no charge there. So free tickets to LA return out of Calgary on Air Canada, and at LAX car rental that was booked. Anyways, we decided against it because of all the issues with Canadian air travel. So
Yeah,
it's
I don't
just
know.
not trustworthy.
I don't know how it is in the States, but it's reported on almost like daily here about flights getting canceled and flights not happening and flights getting delayed.
And arbitrary changes to people's schedules.
Yes, where they're actually at the airport and then they're told, oh, actually, you're leaving tomorrow morning now.
Oh, well, no, the news is also reading like they're just saying, oh, okay, so instead of leaving tomorrow, you're leaving next week. They're literally moving it a week.
No.
Yeah, it's
and the
bad.
luggage thing. People are just never seeing their luggage again.
Yeah.
So we decided, because we actually have lives we need to get back here, that we would maybe modify what we were going to do.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Just keep it open.
Yeah. And we just drove down into the States and had a good adventure and had Red Lobster.
Looked at ghost towns.
Went to ghost towns in
Montana.
Montana.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love Montana.
Yeah, it's a
Big
beautiful
sky
state.
country.
Big
Hi.
sky country.
And Wyoming.
And no speed limit.
Yeah, Utah.
Utah.
Where we have friends.
Yeah.
Well, I have friends in Utah. And Utah, they're called Utahns.
Which I love because that's funny. Which was the state with all the different license plates? They've got like 76. Montana.
100%.
They've got like 76 different license plate designs you can choose from.
I like it, yeah. I just love Montana. I don't know why.
We used to go there all the time when I lived in Calgary because growing up in Calgary,
Idaho, too. I love Idaho.
at one point, the Canadian dollar was higher than the American dollar. So it was awesome for us because we would drive into the States and buy all our school supplies and school clothes and everything, and it'd be way cheaper. So
World famous potatoes.
Idaho.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Montana's big sky country. Yeah.
What's Wyoming famous for?
I honestly don't know. Yellowstone. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
The geysers. I don't know. It's not a huge population in Wyoming. It's even though it's a big state, it's about 500,000 people.
Wow. That's like here, Saskatchewan. Massive province. Less than 1 million people in the whole province.
Yeah.
But if you've ever been to Saskatchewan, you know why.
Yeah, probably.
I love you, Saskatchewan people. Don't hate us.
No, Saskatchewan.
No, there's some pretty
I've been
parts.
there once.
Saskatoon's gorgeous.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to add to that because I was in and out in a day. So.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. So today we're going to talk about a place down in the Inner Harbor. It's now known as Laurel Point. There is a hotel there, a very nice hotel. It was actually built, and people in Victoria, if you don't know this, next time you're downtown, take a look. It was built to resemble a cruise ship.
Yeah, it looks like a cruise ship from certain angles, like a bridge. And
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
In the last few years, they had to do a massive remediation at the front of the hotel because there was a paint factory there, which comes up in story time, which I went down and recorded the story down there. There was a big paint factory there, and it basically poisoned the ground. Like the amount of lead in the soil was just insane. So they actually had to scrape off a massive amount of the top layer of soil.
Sounds like a make-work project.
And then so people and birds didn't die. And then they put down a huge amount of sand and then more dirt, and then they put grass over that. So now it's kind of looking a lot nicer than it did. That was not the original purpose of
leaded grass
Laurel
instead
Point.
of leaded gas.
That's terrible.
Oh, I don't know.
Laurel Point was not always known as Laurel Point. What did it used to be called?
Dead Man's something.
Point.
I was going to say Dead Man's Point.
Dead Man's Point.
I was just having my coffee. So.
There's a Dead Man's Island in Vancouver. I think there's another one up around Nanaimo. But this was Dead Man's Point. And it was used by the First Nations people, the Lekwungen and the Songhees people used it. They used it not only for sky burial, which I talk about.
Yeah, sky burial.
They also had some wooden structures there. They built wooden shed-like structures for the more important people of the tribe. So if you were not that important, you got sky burial. But if you were important, then you got some pretty cool stuff going on. So they would set up these sheds. They would put the dead inside there. But the other thing they would do is they would put up prominent carved wooden burial figures in front of the sheds to show who was buried there. They were beautifully painted. And this feature was really obvious to anyone coming into the Inner Harbor. These were life-size wooden structures. So you would come in to the Inner Harbor, and this is what you would see, this Dead Man's Point sticking out from the sides.
A dead shed.
A dead shed. That's terrible.
Well, no,
that is terrible.
That is terrible. Out of respect to them, but they look more like, I don't know. They aren't really sheds per se.
Well, they were just burial structures. They're like mausoleums.
Yes,
they're First Nations mausoleums, right?
That's I think to call it a shed is a little bit weird, but
I know, but
that's my autism. I'm just looking at the picture here,
and this is white people calling things they don't understand things. So this is where we get this. There were actually pictures taken of these, and a lithograph was done in 1854. So we are going to post those pictures of what it actually looked like at our Patreon site, so you can see those pictures when the episode comes out.
Thank you, Patreon.
Thank you, patrons.
Get that merch.
Get that merch.
We're excited to launch a new doggy line, but that's all later.
So that's what's going on here. Is we've got this Dead Man's Point, and everyone knew it. And of course, I know this is going to surprise you, Jason. The colonial people, I know this is going to shock you, actually did not respect the First Nations stuff.
What?
I know. I know. What they saw was land they wanted, and what they did was they took it. And that's exactly what happened, with some disastrous side effects,
yes,
I might add.
Yeah, it's karma, I imagine.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And I actually do have some a little bit of extra for the story that I told that I had forgotten about, because it's one of the stories we do on the Ghost Walk. So I hope you will enjoy that. We've got our story time coming up, so enjoy as we head off to Dead Man's Point / Laurel Point, and we will be with you when we get back. Before 1855, Dead Man's Point, or what we now know as Laurel Point, was a sacred place for the Lekwungen, the First Nations people who first inhabited the area. They kept this place as a village of the dead and practiced sky burial among the tall trees that covered the point. Sky burials involved laying out their dead in nature, allowing the elements to clean the flesh from the bones, and then carefully and respectfully gathering the bones and place them in baskets and boxes, which they then put up high in special and revered trees. Their village was across the harbor at Songhees Point, but this village of the dead was sacred. The First Nations believed that the dead never truly leave. They stay with us and remain a part of village life. However, they need to be respected and kept in their own place so they cannot interfere with the lives of the living. Certain days were set aside to go to the place of sky burial and perform ceremonies to honor and respect the ancestors. If you've ever seen a horror movie, you know, rule number 1, don't go in the basement. Rule number 2, don't mess with a First Nations graveyard. And of course, the Europeans messed with it. In 1885, Jacob Sell, who had arrived in BC from Germany in 1858, decided that the Point was the perfect spot for a furniture factory. To build his factory, Jacob first needed to clear all the trees. He hired a team, and as the trees came down, the men noticed the boxes and baskets of bones tumbling from the trees to the ground. They thought it was strange, but they kept clearing. The First Nations people took notice of this. In fact, they were so distraught when they saw what Jacob's men were doing that the chief of the Lekwungen sent a runner over to the Point to find out what was going on. The runner quickly realized that these men were not doing this to bring upon themselves some kind of profound curse, but rather their actions were the result of genuine ignorance to the fact that they were destroying a burial ground. When the runner returned to the village and explained this to the chief, he immediately sent the women and children inland, far away from the Point. He knew something bad was going to happen. You cannot disturb the bones and resting places of the ancestors without consequence. After the trees were cut down, the boxes and baskets of bones that had fallen were thrown into a giant pile and unceremoniously set on fire. When the fire died down, anything that hadn't burned was shoveled into the ocean. No thought was given to the people they had disturbed or the souls they might have angered. Mr. Sell then built his furniture factory. It ran very well until a rather unfortunate evening in January 1894. Jacob and his wife Elizabeth had retired for the evening when they saw wisps of smoke coming up through the heating vent. In no time at all, their house was engulfed in flames. Strangely, the factory, which was over a kilometer away, began burning at the same time. Jacob and Elizabeth ran from their burning home, and as they ran, Elizabeth noticed there seemed to be figures leaping and dancing in the flames. She called them fire men and claimed they were running their hands down the drapes and along the walls to make the fire burn even faster. Jacob and Elizabeth barely escaped with their lives. Elizabeth never got over the horror of losing her house and almost losing her life at the hands of the dancing fire men. In fact, she ended up losing her mind. Within 6 months of the fire, 47-year-old Elizabeth Sell died. Jacob had lost everything. Tried to restart his factory and bring on partners, but he was not able to do so. His business never recovered and the factory was never rebuilt. The chunk of land, which people had started referring to as Sell's Point after the fire, was then bought by Mr. William Pendray, who saw the site as a wonderful place to build a paint factory. He began to build in 1908. I love that it took almost 30 years for that piece of land to sell after the first owner had not been as respectful as he might have been. William was not concerned with ancient First Nations curses or vengeful ghosts, but he was concerned, understandably, about fire. He installed a fire suppression system that was quite revolutionary for the early 1900s. It mostly consisted of large iron pipes that hung down from the ceiling. If a fire began, the system could be turned on with a large crank that would flood the tubes with water, which would fall from the holes in the pipes and extinguish the fire below. It wasn't quite what we've come to expect for the fire safety systems we enjoy today, but it was certainly better than nothing. William was very proud of his new paint factory, and he was walking through it one day, making sure everything was just so and had been done correctly, when he heard one of the large iron pipes coming loose from the ceiling. It fell 40 feet, landing directly on William's head. He was killed instantly. With William Pendray gone, his eldest son Ernest was expected to take over the factory. Ernest Pendray enjoyed many of the things young men enjoy, including a very fast horse and buggy. Ernest loved riding his horse and buggy around town, going just about as fast as he could go. It even had special metal rails on the wheels so it could cut through the mud, just to gain that extra bit of speed. One day, as he approached the factory, his horse suddenly and inexplicably shied and stopped dead in his tracks. Ernest was thrown from the carriage and landed directly in front of his horse, and just as suddenly the horse had stopped, it started running, pulling the carriage right behind it. It pulled forward, and the heavy steel-rimmed carriage wheel ran directly over Ernest's neck, who was still lying wounded and winded in the street. Unfortunately for Ernest, his head and his body were separated, and Ernest died in the driveway right in front of the factory. Unlike Jacob Sell's unfortunate house, the Pendray family home is still standing. It's now known as the Gatsby Mansion and is part of the Huntington Manor Hotel, just 250 meters from where the paint factory used to stand. If you happen to work the front desk at the Gatsby Mansion, you will be briefed on the emergency protocol. This protocol has nothing to do with fire or earthquakes, but is instead all about room number 5. Room 5 was the master suite when William Pendray was the owner and occupant of the house. It's now the honeymoon suite. If you would like to see a ghost, there's a good chance your wish will be granted if you stay in room 5. Many guests have woken up to see 2 heads hovering and circling around the bed, watching them right back as they stare up at them. Back to the emergency or ghost protocol that you, as a staff member, have been briefed on. It's been put into place for guests who show up at the front desk in the middle of the night in their pajamas, or less, demanding to be moved into a new room. As per the protocol, the guests are relocated immediately with smiles and assurances and given a free breakfast. Because, of course, free breakfast solves everything. If you're still interested in staying in the haunted room, it would be best not to try for an extra spooky night. Attempts to make a booking for Halloween will likely require you to be placed on a waiting list. It could be a few years before you have the chance to spend a haunted night with the 2 resident spirits, that is, those of William and Ernest. The gracious and lovely inn at Laurel Point now stands where Mr. Sell and Mr. Pendray both had their ill-fated factories. The site was originally referred to as Dead Man's Point, so I can see why the name would be changed. I'm not sure the inn would get many guests if they called it Inn at Dead Man's Point. Please be assured if you're staying there, you have nothing to fear. The vengeful spirits seem to have calmed down quite a bit. However, guests and staff have experienced dark shadows moving through the halls, wine glasses tipping over by themselves, and strange noises or sounds coming from empty rooms. When no one is overly anxious to discuss such things, you may notice them if you go there. While the ghosts have indeed settled down, they still remain. They found that allowing the cleaning staff to work together saved them on a lot of retraining costs, because it's a lot less scary if you're in a room with another living person when the door closes by itself or the lights go out or the TV turns on or off by itself. It's much easier if you've got someone else there to witness that, and you're less likely to quit. My own experience over at the inn at Laurel Point is quite typical. I knew nothing of its history or hauntings the first time I went there. I'd been invited to a retirement event for a colleague. I remember being in a beautiful solarium at the back of the hotel, and it struck me as very odd that the room seemed to be quite dim. Not only were the lights on, but the sun was shining through the windows. I just couldn't shake that feeling of darkness. Not in an evil sense, just in an absence of light sense. Since my first experience in the hotel, I've been back a number of times for different events and occasions. It really is an excellent hotel, but I always notice a feeling of darkness that seems to permeate all the public spaces. I returned to the hotel recently with a friend who's also sensitive to spiritual things. Ensuring that we were both open and protected, we walked through the hotel and tried to absorb what was going on around us. We both sensed almost at the same moment a wistfulness or lostness that seemed to be the primary energy moving around us. Could this be the displaced spirits who had their eternal home disturbed and destroyed? As we explored the building, we almost seemed to be drawing some energy to us. Perhaps it could sense that we were there to experience something and was drawn to that. I'm not sure, but after a while we felt it would be better if we left. There is a sadness to the land and the building that is hard to explain. It is unfortunate that what was set aside as a sacred place of rest and honor was so badly defiled by newcomers who didn't know any better. Would this piece of land be quite so scarred if its original purpose had not been disrupted? In and around Victoria, we come across this situation again and again. It may be why the spirits in Victoria are still so active and insist on being remembered and discovered even today. Well, welcome back. I hope hopefully you were freaked out and terrified by this, and you are absolutely convinced that you have possibly seen the ghost of William Pendray through the mansion's windows.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
It is bizarre. People say it's like a greasy fog that forms over the bed, and then these heads emerge from the fog.
That's so bizarre.
I don't think it'd be cool
from a fog.
No, don't want to see it. I'm good. There's
one
more
like
thing.
Looking in the past. I'm not sure what. I don't know, but that is a little bizarre. I don't know if it's far-fetched, but not weird. It's just bizarre.
It is weird. There's one more addition to that. So we talked about William Pendray and his son, the speed demon, who liked to go fast in his horse carriage. But there was one more son, because the Pendrays, as I mentioned, lived very close. And it used to be called Gatsby Mansion. I don't know why they called it that. They have reverted the name of the Gatsby Mansion now to the Pendray House.
Yes, that's
which is nice. But there was one more son who I'm pretty sure at this point was not super excited to take up a management position at the cursed family factory. But he did, and he promised his mom, she made him promise, he would never ride a horse or take a horse and buggy to the factory.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because she was scared of what would happen to him would happen to her
Wheels
or her
falling
other son.
off.
Yeah. So he didn't. But one day, as he approached the factory, he noticed lying in the road, quite near the gates, was a shotgun, which was weird.
Yeah, that is odd.
People usually didn't have a lot of shotguns. They had maybe one shotgun. They took care of it. They were very aware of it, where it was, what was happening with it. And so it was a bit of a shock for him to see this, and he didn't want anyone to get hurt. So what he did was he went over and he picked the shotgun up. Now, if you know anything about firearms, you're going to know what happened next was not really explainable, because it had quite a long barrel. Mm-hmm. But when he picked the shotgun up, whatever he did with it, it went off.
Oh, geez.
And it shot him through his right shoulder.
Oh,
and in those days, well, let's just say we didn't have the same reconstructive surgery things we have now. He didn't die, surprisingly. It went right through his shoulder. It didn't hit his lungs.
Lucky guy.
Yeah, very lucky. But he did not continue to manage the factory at this point. I think his mom just wanted him home, and they hired a manager to do that part. But pretty interesting family, with the fact that this factory found a way to get its revenge on everyone. So moral of the story, don't mess with First Nations graveyards.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Not a good idea. Yeah. As I mentioned in the story, if you've ever seen a horror movie, it's not a good idea. Poltergeist, remember, they built the whole subdivision on a First Nations graveyard and didn't tell anybody. And that's where the Poltergeist stuff all happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we've been past the Kamloops School one. That's where they discovered
really
those bodies.
Sad. That was where they first discovered the residential school bodies that everyone who knows anything about residential schools knew they were going to find.
I was helping my mom actually file for a class action suit this week. It was very emotional. But we got it difficult. In because she was part of the Indian Day School.
Yeah.
So I put a lot of pressure on her, because she's like, well, I don't have the records.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to remember.
My mom is a survivor.
Yeah,
big shout out to my mom.
Yeah.
She watched 2 of her sons burn to death in a fire.
Yeah.
And my brother committed suicide many years ago. So bad news. I mean, to put this into perspective for our listeners and how awful it was, the Indian Day School, they would take you away from your families and shove you into these schools. Mm-hmm. And, my mom remarked about the beatings. So my mom was in an arranged marriage.
At a very, very young age.
Yeah. She accepted the arranged marriage at 12.
Yeah.
And this is in the 60s.
And the guy was like 30 or something.
Yeah, he was in his late 30s.
Yeah.
Repugnant. And that's who, just I don't, for anyone who has trauma and what have you, it was a very emotional week filing for that.
It was a hard
filing
week.
for the and she's like, oh, tick the box for 10,000, and just easy, you just say, oh yeah, I got yelled at.
Well,
I said, no
give
way.
it perspective, it's a range between level 1 to level 5.
Yeah, and she just ticked the level 1 because it's easy, blah blah blah. And I said, no. When I recall the stories, She's level 4 to 5,
and she doesn't like talking about it. She doesn't bring it up. Like if she's talking about it, she has to be in a safe space kind of thing. And it was really hard on her, but I'm very proud of her for pushing through, getting it done, filing it with the government, because that's who this is all about. It's about, and we talked about that, and I said, well, maybe you'll get some money out of this, and that's a good thing. And she goes, well, money can't fix it. And I said, no money, but the money is an acknowledgement that wrong happened. That's really important.
The biggest, I think, reconciliation. That's where reconciliation starts.
Exactly.
Is it easy to tick level 1 and not have to explain your story? Yes. But I said to her, get me in an email, because that in that fire that she lost her 2 sons, that's where all the records went.
Yeah.
The pictures of her youth,
yeah,
the transcripts, everything were burned in that fire.
Yeah.
So I said, you have a fairly lengthy story, and more importantly, Mom, this isn't about a dollar figure at the end of this. This is about people hearing the story.
100%. And your mom is one of the most humble, unassuming people. She just wants to be a help. She wants to be friendly. She wants to be kind. She doesn't want to make a fuss. She doesn't, she's not that person. So it was even harder for her in some ways to do that.
Yeah, and we got her into the RCMP, and the
helped
constable helped her.
Yeah, so thank you.
And then the constable messaged me, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to the constable.
Yeah.
And he messaged saying she was crying as she was signing, and as he witnessed it as an RCMP officer, he just felt sick.
Yeah. So, you know what? I know that took a bit of a dark turn for our usually lighthearted podcast.
Yeah, but
speaking of, this is real life history, and this story is about real life history, and what kind of the Europeans did to the people who were here first, and so this fits.
This is an extension of that, but for our listeners who say, "Oh, this is
way back
50 years ago,
100 years ago,
70 or 100 years ago." Some of these schools closed down in the 90s.
Yeah, the last residential school closed down, I believe it was 1992, which is horrifying.
That's in our generation.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. The stories are going to keep coming out. I know they're going to start coming out in the US as well. Someone tweeted something about, if you're American and you're feeling superior, don't. The only difference is our stories haven't been told yet, and they're coming. So
that's a fair point.
It happened everywhere. It happened in Australia with the Aborigines. Like, we all have a pretty big apology to make, and I'm hoping in Canada anyway we can see some reconciliation and see some of these just basic human rights returned to our First Nations people. So it's important. And if you don't know about it, there's a lot of actual free courses you can take provided by universities online to learn more about First Nations people, the Indian Act as they called it, all these things. There was a great book you were reading about what was it, 20 things you should know about the Indian Act, or 20 questions you should, something like that, which is highly illuminating, because both Jason and I, and he's First Nations, half First Nations, we were both raised to think that, the First Nations people get everything for free, and the government gives them houses and pays for all their schooling, and no, none of that is actually true.
I took a U of A and U of T course to get enlightened on the subject, because I was under that belief.
They don't teach it in school.
No, because I was born and raised Gumsiwa, or white, and I paid taxes since day one. I don't know what it's like to get free this or that. No. In regard to that, though, I started looking at this course, and I started taking it, and it's enlightening even to myself. I'm quite ignorant.
I was shocked.
You look at these reserves, as they're called,
yeah,
and these reserves are not the actual places where the Indians resided.
No,
what they are is when the foreigners were observing,
the government inspectors came.
Yeah, they were looking at the activities that seemed to be seasonal.
Yeah.
So these activities that were seasonal at the time, that's where they just said, "Oh, that's where they live."
Yeah.
It's not, it's a fallacy.
These are people who moved around depending on the seasons, because they needed to be in different places to do different things to keep their community alive.
Correct.
And so if they stumbled upon you in the summer and you were by the river fishing.
Yeah, because you're fishing.
Well, then that's who you are now. That's where you live.
That's where you live.
You get this sort of
arbitrary
50-kilometer area, and we're going to stick y'all on there, and that's it.
Like, you get this arbitrary chunk of land, and we all presuppose, these houses are free. Well, I think if you apply to the government for a house, I think what you get is between 20 and 30 grand.
Yeah. And
that's not going to build anything.
And you have to come up with the rest, and then you have to pay the government rent.
Yeah, and the irony is you can't get a loan or mortgage because you technically don't own the property. No. So that's why some of these places are running down and falling apart, because these people who want to reside in them or even live or even function in these places, they're falling apart. Yeah. That's where the reconciliation is really breaking down.
Yeah.
So you see these places just falling down, and you empathize and you feel bad, and you're like, oh, well, just fix it. Well, they can't.
Yeah.
They can't get a loan for it. They can't get a mortgage because technically they don't own it.
Yeah. We discovered that under the Indian Act, and it's still called that the First Nations people have less rights than a mentally handicapped person.
It's very true. They have less rights than him.
It's not good. People. It's not good. Anyway.
So that's a bit off topic, but I think
it's off topic, but it's not.
It is not.
The whole point of this is what happened back then is still trying to be fixed, and it is still affecting people today.
Well, the irony here is on the subject of trying to fix transportation here in Victoria, we have the old ENN line.
Yes.
And part of the problem with them getting it up and running is they're trying to appease the feds to get land settlements, because the railroad itself is running along
First Nations land.
So so that's actually slowing it down too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we do need to get mass transportation here in Victoria. It's just becoming a clog.
Yeah.
But it is. We reap what we sow, I think, at the end of the day.
We do.
That's really what this particular story is about. Is some people overreached and they didn't respect things, and unfortunately,
100%.
It's. Some people call it karma. Some people call it disastrous. I don't know. There's no easy answer.
The bottom line is we are back from our vacation full of fire, full of righteous indignation. And of course, now we're sharing that with you.
And can't wait to share the photos that we got on this trip. I got some really nice ones finally. I finally was actually able to get out and take photos.
Yeah. Which is awesome. And we will also be able to hint to you coming up some of the places that may be in the Calgary book.
Yeah, that's right.
So there we go. We want to thank all the people who have supported us and all the lovely people we have met along the way. We do stick our magnets on for Ghosts and Bears. We stick it on the car whenever we go on a car trip.
Yeah, it's a little bit of fun.
It is fun. And
people have tracked us down.
Yeah. And people have actually started listening to the podcast because of that. So that's fun. But we really want to thank the people who are making this happen, which is our Patreon members.
Yeah, they're all out there.
We love you very much. We love you. You people are amazing. So today specifically, we want to thank Adam,
Bryce,
Sherry,
Brooks,
Marion,
Kathleen,
Alexa,
Debbie,
Jackie,
Charlotte,
Ruth,
Rebecca,
Mary Frances,
Cassie,
Gina and Victoria,
Sandy,
Christopher,
David,
Ashley,
Jeremiah,
Elizabeth,
BB Nix,
Melinda,
Jordan,
Tammy,
James,
Taya,
Evan, our amazing Prill man,
Arwen,
Steve,
Kyle and Charlotte,
Catherine,
and Mari. Thank you so much, you guys, for everything you do for us. And we hope you are enjoying your benefits from your different tiers. The t-shirts, the coffee mugs, the stickers.
All sorts of things.
Also, all the episodes of Ghost Stories we have heard.
Yes.
Which we love doing. And it's a lot of fun because now we're taking you on our road trips with us.
Yeah, it's a bit different.
It's a lot more fun than... I mean, we love sitting here and doing this, but it's a lot more fun when we're on the road and we can well, Jason gets to honk the horn, as you know, and you've heard the stories.
Yeah,
and we do all the fun stuff. So, yeah, and we also, that's where we post all the extra pictures from the episodes so you can see what we're talking about, get some more insight into what's going on, and all those good things. So check out patreon.com/Ghosts and Bears. And if you want to reach out and let us know how we're doing, we always want to hear that as well. You can get to us through Gmail at ghostsandbears@gmail.com. And of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to see you there. So, be in touch. We love to hear from you. Thanks for sending in your stories that we're able to use as well. We really appreciate
thank you very much. We appreciate it.
And if you have somewhere you think we should go to do the actual ghost story, but the actual history and the actual place, then do let us know. We'd love to come and see you and hang out and do a story. We're far more easily mobile now than we were. So we're
mobile monsters,
mobile monkeys on the road. So yeah, please let us know, and we'd love to come and see you and do your story. And who knows? We're still working on that TV thing. We're gonna go check out the
that's right,
the
Shaw
studios
Cable.
and Shaw Cable and do the TV thing. So you may be able to see some Ghosts and Bears as a show.
On cable.
It's on the table now, which is terrifying for both of us, but I'm sure it'll work out great. Anyway, thank you guys for being with us on this episode of the Laurel Point / Dead Man's Point Inn. And I hope you enjoyed the story. And if you do get to Victoria, check the place out. Otherwise, we will see you soon. We will, I heard movement. Oh, Moby's ready to go out.
Moby,
so we better go.
I think, wants out.
He wants out bad. We're going to go, and thank you so much, you guys. Remember, if you're wondering about podcasts, we're the only podcast with the actual ghost story.
With the actual history.
In the actual place, and hopefully someday soon.
That place will be with you.
Oh, apparently it'll be outside.
Moby wants out. And I think Randy's calling too.
Probably. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.